We might jump into it. Welcome, everybody. I think there'll be a few more joining as we go forward, but let's get into it. So my name is Anna. I'm really excited to be your host today for this wonderful webinar on exploring how workplaces are managing successful mental health first aid programs. As we do start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're all joining from today. So I am joining you all from Wongal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to the elders on all of the different lands that we are joining from today, and also to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us on this webinar. As I mentioned, my name is Anna. I am a principal with Social Ventures Australia, and I'm also a mental health first aider, and I'm really looking forward to facilitating this conversation with our four wonderful panelists that we have for you today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping before we jump in. The chat function is live, so do encourage you to drop in your name, where you're dialing in from, and of course, if you have particular comments or questions as we're going forward, then please do feel free to use the chat function. This webinar is being recorded as well. Hopefully you will all have a notification of that as you joined the session. Also, in terms of the format, we had a range of different questions put forward from all of you as you registered. So thank you for that. We'll try and work through as many of those questions as we can in the time that we have together. So our panelists today, I'll introduce them more formally in a moment, but we have Kristen Potter from the Perth Mint, Liz Napier from the Animal Referral and Emergency Centre, we have Meg Texan from Metcash, and Kerry Henderson from PwC Australia. On the note there as well, on the page, you can see a couple of referrals. If anything today is brought up for you, there are a couple of numbers there, and do encourage you to reach out for help. Why are we all here today? As we all know, mental health and wellbeing is a really, really critical part of our lives. And we know that, for 2 in 5 Australians over the age of 16, they will experience a mental health condition over the course of their lifetime. And indeed, 1 in 5 of us will experience a mental health illness in the previous 12 months. So it's very real, it's very prevalent, and it's all around us. And of course, that includes in the workplace. An important thing for us all to be cognizant of as well is, while the prevalence might not necessarily be increasing, there is a real increase in help-seeking behaviour, and that's where, of course, that important role of the mental health first aiders comes into play. And we're really looking forward to exploring what that might look like in lots of different contexts as we do go through this session today with our 4 wonderful panelists. Before I introduce the panel, we do have a brief video to show. So I will take off the slide and we'll pop up a brief video, and then we'll jump into the session. And apologies, I think our sound is perhaps not working. We might just reshare that and try again. Apologies for that.
Mental health training is really important for my team because it provides them with the confidence and the tools and the skill set in which to address those that they care for, providing their own self-care regarding the balance of their mental health, and connecting with those in our workplace.
Well, I love mental health first aid because it's got a suite of evidence-based and reliable data to support all of the information it provides any of the participants. And it's really focused on early intervention. It does share a lot of information around the most predominant mental illnesses across Australia, so people become more familiar with those, as well as some of the more prominent crises that people may find themselves in or supporting somebody through.
When I undertook the mental health training, I found it extremely revealing. It's equipped me with tools and equipped me with an ability to talk openly about the topic, be able to confront the topic with an employee in distress, and also tools to help manage and provide support to employees where it's needed.
People feel safe and comfortable to talk about their health, all aspects of their health, including their mental health and wellbeing. That's been fantastic to see.
The tangible differences that we've seen is a change in our levels of absenteeism and the transparency. So when someone needs to take time off, how are they supported? How is their return to work supported for it? And it's no longer cloaked with stigmatism, which is really important too.
I think it's an enormous part of community in general, and I think it's very much like physical first aid. It's a topic that exists that should be spoken about openly.
I am such a big advocate for mental health first aid. I'm always out there singing how impressed I have been with just how simple but practical and really approachable this training piece is for anyone, regardless of their, educational background, their cultural background. It just makes sense and it connects and resonates with so many people.
Well, I think we can all agree that it is a really exciting and important program. So to introduce our panelists, and I'll ask them all to turn their cameras on. So firstly, we have Liz. Liz is an emergency veterinarian at a busy 24/7 hospital in Newcastle, as well as a team leader and internship coordinator. Liz has increased the knowledge and awareness of mental health since becoming a mental health first aid instructor, providing courses within their organisation and across the broader veterinary community. Next up, we have Kristen. Kristen is the Group Manager of Organisational and Cultural Development at the Perth Mint, leading mental health and wellbeing initiatives, diversity and inclusion, employee engagement, training, internal communication and cultural change projects. Kristen is a registered psychologist and an accredited mental health first aid instructor, and is passionate about engaging leaders and elevating the importance of the workplace in addressing mental wellbeing. Meg. So Meg is the National Manager of Health and Injury Management at Metcash, and is a passionate health and safety leader with over 18 years experience working across insurers, self-insurers and large employers across the food and liquor wholesale, hardware, manufacturing, defence, aerospace and logistics industries. Meg is also a finalist for the mental health program at the National Safety Awards for Excellence. And last but not least, we have Kerry. So Kerry is the Consulting Portfolio and Transformation Lead at PwC Australia, and is on the leadership team for their mental health program, Greenlight to Talk. Kerry's role in Greenlight to Talk is to lead, empower and support the community of mental health first aiders by actively engaging across PwC to reduce the stigma and promote the importance of conversations about mental health and early access to professional support. So welcome to you all. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. So first question, I'm going to jump into it. Kerry, have you seen an increased need for mental health first aid training and skills in the workplace? And if so, in what way?
Thanks, Anna, and hi to everybody on the line today. So as Anna mentioned, at PwC, our mental health first aid is a part of a bigger mental health program called Greenlight to Talk, which aims to reduce stigma and increase awareness about mental health issues. We maintain having 3% of our people, partners and staff as Greenlight to Talk advocates, and it's these advocates that are trained in mental health first aid. I think with the introduction of Greenlight to Talk about 4 years ago, there's been a huge increase in our firm's collective understanding of mental health, the importance of supporting the mental health of our people, and having our Greenlight to Talk advocates obviously supports that objective. It's led to more conversations and therefore more demand for our people to want to be mental health first aid trained. But I guess to more directly answer your question, Anna, and the need to have mental health first aid trained staff has definitely increased in the last couple of years. As most of us are aware, mental health difficulties increased during and since the pandemic, increased fear, anxiety, panic, social isolation. And then in parallel to that, the way that we work at PwC and many other organizations has changed. So we've gone from being predominantly office-based, where our advocates were more visible, had the ability to more easily identify signs of a colleague being unwell or having an emerging mental health issue, and our advocates were there to provide in-person support. And now we then moved to working fully virtually in the height of the pandemic, and now in this kind of hybrid working environment where we're perhaps not getting to know people in the same way. So looking out for those early signs through a screen may be harder, and being visible as a pathway for support is also more difficult. So the need is definitely there, and having more people aware or more people trained in mental health first aid is really critical to supporting our people and their well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kerry. And as you say, lots of changes over the last couple of years, which means we've all had to adapt to many different ways of working, including how we support our people and our teams. Liz, I'd love to chat with you. I know you're, in your own words, you're just starting on implementing mental health, programs across the workplace. What are some of the key factors and elements that you've considered to bring people on board and make this a success in your context?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone, and so excited, and it's wonderful being here today. As you mentioned, Anna, we're starting out implementing mental health first aid across our organisation, and hopefully there's some of you on today that may be looking into this or maybe starting out as well. For us, a key factor was really starting small, picking one key area that we wanted to focus on, and then looking at building from that. So once we got things started, we really built a lot of momentum, and it created a snowball effect of increasing mental health awareness and promotion throughout our organisation. For us, we really focused on where we wanted to have an impact on mental health for our team within the business and the organisation, and what that would look like. And for us, thinking about that, it was having our team trained as mental health first aiders and mental health first aid officers throughout the organisation. For us, being a 24-hour business, so we're staffed all the time, we decided to have an internal instructor trained up to deliver that training. So that's where the thought process came of myself being able to train up as a mental health first aid instructor and being able to deliver that training internally to our team. And that gave us the flexibility of running the sessions as we wanted to help allow for that training throughout our team. We also thought it was really important to train up a cross-section of our organisation. So as we're all probably aware, mental health first aid is not something we plan to deliver to someone. It can come up at any time. So we wanted to make sure throughout our different roles within the team and our different shift times and structures that we would have mental health first aiders available at that time when it may be needed. And the other thing that we've really focused on as a team is promoting mental health and psychological safety within our organisation, but also externally as well. So looking at our recruitment and onboarding process and really sharing that with any potential new employees so that they understand the value that we're placing on mental health within the organisation, and just educating them with that importance in their onboarding process as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So much to explore there. I think we might circle back around to some of those points. But Kristen, I'd love to throw over to you. Mental health first aid is just one part of your broader mental health and wellbeing strategy. Can you talk to us a little bit about how the different elements work together to support your teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, everybody, or good afternoon to those dialing in from the eastern states. So for the Perth Mint, similar to Kerry at PwC, it's been fairly well embedded into our business. So we've been running the program for just over 3 years now. So it really is part of the fabric of what we do. And it forms part of our broader wellbeing and inclusion programs that we offer. So a key approach to our program is that we treat physical illness with the same level of seriousness as mental illness, and that we have structured plans and procedures in place around those so that our people know what to do. We also heavily promote and engage our people in our diversity and inclusion programs to ensure that everyone feels safe and welcome to bring their whole selves to work, and that they know how to reach out for help when they need to. So our actual program delivers a range of protective, promotional and supportive strategies. So some of the protective strategies that we run include anti-bullying, harassment and discrimination training, as well as making confidential reporting options available to our employees. Some examples of the promotional strategies that we run include sharing information about mental health to increase awareness and reduce stigma, celebrating Are You OK Day and Mental Health Awareness Month each year, and hosting a range of different wellness events for our people, such as yoga, meditation, healthy eating, sleep workshops and so forth. But a really critical part of the program is the training of our leaders so that they can role model empathetic leadership and learn how to have mental health first aid conversations with their teams. Lastly, some support strategies include providing access to a large network of trained mental health first aid officers, similar to Liz, making sure that we have people stationed across all of our sites, across all shift patterns, and ensuring that our people have a range of trained mental health first aid officers that they can choose from and that they feel comfortable talking to. We also have access to a registered psychologist on site, and we heavily promote our employee assistance program, who we're soon to actually host on site for ease of access to our people as well. And then finally, we've been working on improving flexible work options and reasonable adjustments across our sites.
So much in that, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. And others have touched on this, but Meg, you work in a really, across a really diverse portfolio with, very different teams and contexts. How are you working to support mental health first aid in the workplace across such diversity?
Thank you, Anna, and hi, everybody. For a little bit of context in how diverse Metcash actually is, because some may not be really familiar with Metcash, we're actually Australia's leading wholesaler and distributor, employing over 6,000 people and supplying and supporting more than 100,000 businesses across a network of independent retailers and businesses in the food, grocery, liquor and hardware industries. Metcash have a network of corporate-owned stores across these sectors that trade under recognisable homegrown Aussie brands like IGA, Bottle-O, Mitre 10, and they contribute to the distribution and buying power of our business. So we have a really incredible, diverse business that at its heart champions the success of the great Aussie dream, a family-owned local businesses and our wonderful independent retailers. Across our head offices, mega DCs, local stores that also support thriving communities. We pride ourselves also on our very diverse workforce and our team members. So as much as we are passionate about supporting successful independence, we're just as passionate about building a culture of care within the Metcash family and the role that we all have in building this. We know that how we perform our tasks every single day can affect not just our own safety, but also the safety of those around us, and more broadly, how all of our actions and the way we do things shapes the culture at Metcash. And that's what makes us a favourite place to work. The formation of these safe habits is the heart of our safety culture. And that's assisted by our holistic health and wellbeing program, which works to basically enable our leaders to cultivate a culture of care. And the program helps our employees grow and thrive into highly engaged, productive and safety-focused teams. And this itself has been a pivotal factor in how we support our mental health program. We worked really hard to get the foundations right, and like Kristen created, a holistic approach to health and well-being, and therefore the mental health first aid in our workplaces, so that regardless of the wonderful brand above our hearts, on our uniforms, the actual genuine care within our hearts builds the trust across our very diverse workforce. We've tried to keep the message simple, never ever underestimate the power of genuine care for others, and simply that's what mental health first aid is about. I was very passionate about ensuring that the program didn't feel like a token program or something that kind of sat alone by itself. It was important to get all the foundations right. From partnering with HSC Global, we were able to make the program a little bit more bespoke to our company. And they gave us the facilitator for our business, which helped us to make it resonate and hit the heart, so that the safe habits could be embedded. We also made sure that this was ingrained within the fabric of how we treat each other every single day and how our leaders interact with their people. So that's kind of what continues to perpetuate the culture of care. So that understanding of what resonates for your business is incredibly important in tailoring your program and weaving it into the DNA of your culture. From ensuring we had the right people championing it, we made it a volunteer program, for example. So we really got the people who were so passionate about it from the very beginning. And so, by word of mouth, it kind of just grew from the bottom up. So we have CEOs and team members all accredited. We have more than 250 accredited mental health first aiders and more than 600 people who are mental health champions across our business on every site and every shift. So ultimately, it's this culture that I think if you get that foundation right, it kind of sustains that support. And to create that system around it where you refresh and embed the habits around it, so that in all the moments that matter, your leaders can kind of take out from their toolkit to kind of make sure people feel cared about. So in your wellbeing programs and things like that, in your wellbeing conversations, it's kind of unpacking those skills that you learn. It's not just something when someone's at crisis. So I think that's what's really worked for us.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks so much, Meg. There's so much richness in that. I want to pull on one of the threads you've touched on, and I'd be interested in exploring this with some of the other panelists around, engaging with volunteers and building the energy. And I might start, Liz, with you. How have you found different strategies to engage with different team members to increase their skill base and complete training and get on board? So maybe I'll throw to Liz first, and then I'd love to hear reflections from Kerry and Kristen as well.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. So I think it's really important within your organization trying to utilize that growth mindset that so many of us have and promote that and foster that within your organization, and that constant sort of will for learning that so many of us have, and sort of give us that further job satisfaction as well. As Meg mentioned, in terms of volunteers, so my suggestion would be asking for expressions of interest, or finding out, who wants to further their knowledge in mental health within your organization, and getting them to come forward and voice that to you. And understand who your mental health champions are. So as Meg mentioned, they have multiple in their organization. So really seeking out those people and using them to help drive the rest of your team, because that's going to then create a ripple effect throughout your other team members and really help increase that willingness and engagement, which is going to be the key with driving your mental health first aid training and rolling out any mental health policies within your workplace, and also looking at how this aligns with your culture as well, looking at the culture from your management team all the way down throughout your organization, and aligning that with mental health first aid. And then thinking about the practical implementation of your training. So how are you creating the time and the space for your staff to complete the mental health first aid training, and not just thinking about the physical space, what psychological space your staff are in, to be able to do that training as well, and then enact on that, and also spreading the word both within your organization and externally. Share these successes, congratulate your team members for putting their hands up and really championing mental health throughout your business.
Fantastic. Thanks, Liz. Kerry, wondered if there's anything else you might like to add from your perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree that, the volunteer aspect of becoming trained in mental health first aid, from a foundation of care and, passion of looking after other people's well-being is really critical. And similarly to the other panelists, that's how we do it at PwC. So we receive expressions of interest to do the training and become a Green Light to Talk advocate. So we have, our kind of baseline is having 3% of our workforce trained in mental health first aid. So I think at the moment we've got about 400 people who have gone through that training and are, actively advocating across their teams for mental health first aid. And then in the winter just been, we released a mental health e-learn for all staff to undertake. So a 30-minute evidence-based course to help raise that awareness more broadly. So outside of those people that volunteer and dedicate themselves to going through the mental health first aid training, this online course is really to increase literacy that bit further across our whole organisation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kerry. Kristen, I'm going to go to you next. I'd love to, and we sort of touched on a couple of these points already with some of the others, but would love to hear, in your world, what are some of the key first steps that you've seen really taken and to be effective in developing a mentally healthy workplace?
Yeah, sure. It can be quite daunting for people who are not quite sure where to start. But I think the first thing to do is to sit down with your CEO and the executive team and really work out the why behind the desire to create a mentally healthy workplace. Understanding the why is really critical to your employee communications to ensure that they know that your intent is genuine and not just a tick the box exercise, like Maggie was talking about earlier. And I think once you've got the why nutted out, the next steps to try and understand the challenges that your employees in your workplace are currently experiencing. So you can do this through consultation, focus groups, surveys, and really any other channels that you've got available to you. And once you understand the why and the what, then you can really start to build a framework that's fit for purpose for your organisation or for your business.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kristen. And I'm going to throw to Meg just to elaborate a little bit more, I think, on, embedding it in the workplace rather than it being, rather than a tick the box kind of exercise. You've talked a lot about embedding with the values and the culture of the org, but we'd love to, any additional reflections you might have on making sure it's truly embedded.
I think we're very lucky at Metcash because our culture it weaves into the fabric of this is how we just do business and how we treat each other. That forms part of our employee value proposition, and we're very clear about that. So that kind of makes it really easy when you have that, inherently within your teams, whether they're at CEO level or someone helping a tradie in a trade yard or someone building a frame and truss for a house. Like, you just look out for your mates. And so we've really been able to tap into that to kind of make sure it just becomes part of how we treat each other. Because simply, with mental health first aid, it's not just about the crisis point, it's about recognizing it and people trusting you to come to you without any stigma or judgment. And they trust their leader or they trust their colleague. You can come to somebody and have a chat. But I think the next level piece is when you offer the support, someone's willing to take that and listen. So we've just kind of woven it into all of the things where it's we do a lot of felt leadership style training, and so those are the habits that we form with all those moments that matter. That's just really it's kind of woven into all of our training. It's woven into all of our comms, and kind of when you look at the Metcash brand, it's very clear that we are all about family, because that's who we support is family businesses.
Fantastic. Thanks, Meg. Kerry, going through to you. You've been working in this space a little while now. How do you know when your mental health programs are effective? What are some of the key things that you look for or you can see when you're having these successes?
I think similar to what Kristen and some of the others have said, our mental health program is, one part of a bigger diversity, inclusion and wellbeing strategy. So each element of that will have various measures to make sure that it's being effective. The mental health component, is really in place to support our people. So their experience is one of the most important measures in evaluating its effectiveness. So we capture our people's experience through employee mojo surveys and anonymous feedback forms to kind of measure the level of stigma that they observe associated with mental health, their awareness of the support pathways that we have in place at PwC, and their exposure to conversations around mental health, you know, all part of reducing the stigma, normalizing conversations and seeking support as we need. We also receive kind of de-identified statistics on how our support pathways are being used by our people. So I think the combination of those data points help us to evaluate the effectiveness and then make changes along the way. So making sure we're being agile to that feedback and continually improving to make sure that our program is meeting its objectives.
Thanks, Kerry. And I think we've talked there around the benefits, obviously, to you know, our team members and to individuals. Would love to throw Kristen over to you. From the perspective of your organisation, what are some of the benefits that you see in terms of having mental health first aid skilled staff from that organisational perspective?
I think one of the really visible benefits that we've seen is that it's just become a really frequent part of our daily conversations. You know, we have daily check-ins that we sort of started out in our own little people and culture team, and it's just caught on across the rest of the business, where we ask somebody, you know, what's your number today? Instead of asking something like, are you okay? And they give us an answer on a scale of 1 to 10. And that's you know, do we need to stop work and intervene, or do we, you know, is it a great day type of situation? And little things like that we've seen just pick up and carry through the business, which is really heartwarming. But I think another really visible benefit is that our leaders who have gone through the program have really taken it on board and are quite comfortable in being vulnerable and having these conversations very publicly with the broader organisation, which shows that genuine intent behind what we're trying to do, and also lets people know that it's okay to be vulnerable and open up a safe place to have those conversations.
Thanks so much. I know that there are, you know, people on the line from organisations of all sorts of different sizes, and we've got a great representation on our panel as well. I might come to Liz next. As a relatively smaller organisation compared to some of the others, although certainly not the smallest out there, would you have any you know, advice to sort of those smaller businesses or organisations who are looking at you know, starting or improving their mental health first aid program? What are some of the key things that you might suggest to some of those who might be a bit overwhelmed by, you know, the breadth of all that is possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of come up a bit earlier with that it can seem a bit daunting and overwhelming getting this started. And mental health is such a big topic, and there's so much we understand already, but so much we still don't understand as well. So I think really just starting small, any change will make an impact and will make a difference. And I think focusing on that as you start, and not trying to go with a tick box approach or have sort of a list and try and you know, roll everything out in your organization all at once, because it's not going to be as effective. So really focus on those key things. What's already been mentioned today is the importance of leadership in your organization as well, and it's really mental health needs to be led throughout your organization. And if your leadership team are on board, then the results will follow throughout your organization. And some of the great things the other panelists have talked about are even just conversations that you're having with your team, and how mental health first aid can sort of be shown and seen with those conversations. And I think it's particularly important for leadership teams to be living those values of the mental health first aid training, demonstrating that in their interactions, in their conversations, showing that vulnerability, as Kirsten was mentioning as well, and just really demonstrating that throughout the organisation, I think is so important.
Thanks, Liz. Meg, a similar question to yourself, but sort of looking back over your journey, what are some of the, I guess, key challenges that you've seen, or the key changes that you've implemented as you've gone through this journey across your organisation?
Good question. I think so. We started our very first pilot with the intent of reviewing our mental health at Metcash program. And it started with a few key leaders, as well as you know, our P&C friends, as well as our safety friends. So together it kind of was such a great program that we kind of we're like, this is actually something that we could roll out to all of our leaders. And because we had some really key people within that, they kind of took it and ran with it. And we were very lucky that this all happened pre-COVID. So we had some really great embedded habits in our leaders and our key people across our organization that it kind of, COVID kind of made it snowball into something so wonderful that even our CEOs are accredited. So, you know, I'm incredibly proud of the Metcash family because, you know, have such a big heart. We're like me, we're little, but we have a big heart. So I think the evolution from where it started to the true value of how it can be integrated, not just at crisis, but into this proactive space, I think has been the most significant impact of that journey. Because from one small positive intent, it can have such a ripple effect right across the business, like Liz was saying. So our journey started little, but it's now impacted many. And I think it's really broken down the stigma of mental health. We're very male dominated here. So it's blokes talking to blokes, and we're okay with that and being vulnerable because we feel like we're in a safe place. So that's from where we started to where we are now. I think, you know, it's continuing its trajectory, but yeah, that's been the biggest positive of it all, I think.
Thanks, Meg. Perry, when you think about your journey and how it's been to date, are there any particular pitfalls that you came across as you were working through this that, you know, perhaps you may or may not wish to share, but anything, I guess, key learnings where, you know, things don't always go perfectly, but anything in particular that you sort of found that, you know, has helped you improve or change how you do things over time?
Great question, and I will try my best to answer it. So, as I said, our Green Light to Talk program started about 4 years ago. I was one of the pilot participants in our mental health first aider training, and I think from there, even just a small group, you can see the impact of starting to have conversations across the firm, which then led and continued our journey with Mental Health First Aid Australia. In terms of pitfalls, I'm not quite sure. Maybe a couple of things would be just learning about the spread of those mental health first aid trained staff across the business to make sure that, you know, within every team there is someone ready and willing to have conversations and work on those objectives of the program. Also making sure that group of advocates is really representative of your workforce. So, you know, different offices, different genders, different cultural backgrounds, so that people feel comfortable that they've got someone that they can approach, or feel comfortable when someone approaches them to have a conversation about mental health, and taking into consideration those kind of different elements of belonging. And the points around kind of leadership, you know, making it mandatory or not making it mandatory, I think is something that we're always playing with. So our current set of advocates are all volunteers, as I mentioned before, but, you know, is there a different level of training that we make mandatory for our leaders to give it that greater visibility, to make people feel that the conversations are really happening at all levels? Because while you see it in some areas of PwC, you might not see it everywhere. You know, we're a big business made up of lots of different mini cultures amongst one bigger culture. So yeah, I guess no huge pitfalls, but lots of learnings along the way.
Yeah, Kristen.
Just to add to Kerry's thoughts before, so similarly, we work on a volunteer model, but we offer the training to all of our employees, regardless of whether they are keen to be a mental health first aid officer or not. So whilst we've trained around 15% of our workforce, but we don't have 15% of our workforce who are actual mental health first aid officers, which is fine, because what we find is that by opening it up without having the pressure to necessarily, you know, have your face on a poster and be a mental health first aid officer. People are still learning the skills, they're having the conversations, and that the more of that, the better as far as we're concerned. So I found that's really helped. But one of the pitfalls that, or mistakes that we made when we first started out is we trained our first group of mental health first aid instructors, and we were all excited and sent them on their way out into the business. And that was it. And they were like, what's next? You know, they were so keen to learn. And we quickly realised that we needed to maintain that momentum and that level of enthusiasm. So the training itself wasn't enough. So we implemented a professional development framework for our mental health first aid officers. So we catch up every 2 months and we talk about different topics. We get different trainers and things like that. And we talk about how conversations went in the workplace. And it's really just keeping that support network going. So I guess that was one of our key learnings.
Yeah, so important to support the people who are providing support to others. Yeah, Meg.
I just want to touch on that too. I think creating the network is so important, especially with us where we've got all of our divisions are a little bit siloed sometimes because they focus on different things. This really created that cohesion right across the board. You know, when we trained across different divisions. So you would be with someone from hardware, someone from food, someone from liquor, someone from head office. And so the network and continuing that not only builds the skills, but also that cohesion that we're one Metcash. So I think that goes a long way, again, to building that culture of care that regardless of what site you're on, you know someone's going to be there to talk to if you need it.
Absolutely. That's so important. Liz, you touched earlier on embedding mental health first aid and sort of wellbeing more generally, you know, right from the beginning, you know, through your recruitment and your onboarding processes. I'd love to hear you speak a little bit more about any other adjustments you've been making, you know, across the business or in terms of your external relationships to better reflect, you know, changing needs or different things as they've come up through this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So along with rolling out the mental health first aid training within our organisation, part of what was really helpful with that was building on our mental health policies. And there was a lot of information from mental health first aid that really helped with that and helped drive a few other initiatives. So the other panelists have touched on sort of wellbeing teams and that sort of thing. So we formulated a wellbeing committee to help drive some further changes throughout the workplace. And I think something that's already been brought up as well that's so important is feedback and providing a place for us to get feedback from our team, work out what their needs are. And I think that's a space where we can really grow and that we're wanting to explore more with this committee as well and get a representation of our team and what their needs are too. In terms of us sort of promoting things outside of the organisation, we also offer mental health first aid training to local vet clinics as well. So really trying to expand that awareness and knowledge of mental health within our industry because it is so important for everyone, but we've identified that as a really key issue of importance in our profession that we'd really like to help out other businesses and clinics as well.
Yeah, Meg.
I also just wanted to say, I think with some of the legislative changes, especially in Victoria, with what's required of businesses now in the mental health space, and you know, when we develop prevention plans and things like that, it's definitely helped Metcash kind of be on the front foot once those things are rolled out, and really engage a number of leaders who probably ordinarily wouldn't have understood the importance, but how all the other bits and pieces kind of form that fabric around how we actually proactively manage psychological risk in our business. So I think that's been an incredible positive that when we consult that across, it represents such a larger portion of our workforce. And we know that we're also putting in place things that adequately, I guess, mitigate the risk around this. And, you know, our workforce actually feels part of that process.
Gary.
Yeah, to follow on what Meg said and something Liz touched on as well around updating policies, I think, you know, all part of becoming more contemporary and moving with the times. but a few wellness policies we have in place. But I guess one of the ones that stands out most for me is moving from having, 10 days of sick leave every year to calling it 10 days of personal leave. So what does that look like for you, and really trying to normalize taking a day off for your mental health is just as important and on the same vein as taking a day off for your physical health. And in fact, I think, working virtually now, it's almost easier to work from home when you've got a bit of a cold, not that I encourage it, versus taking a day off, if you're feeling that little bit anxious or stressed. So yeah, just that little renaming of that leave policy, but also adding in words there around if you're not feeling your best self, that you are entitled to take a day for yourself.
Yeah, so important, and language does matter and makes such a big difference. Sometimes we get caught up in words, but really they really do matter, and they change how we think about things and how we engage with different content. So I think that's a really interesting point. Thanks, Kerry. Kristen, would love to hear from you around what does the future of mental health first aid training look like at the Mint? What are the next key stages of your journey?
Yeah, no, good question. So in the last 3 years, we've grown from 300 employees to almost 650 employees. So our growth has been exponential. And similar to Liz's model, we wanted to make sure that we had an internal instructor. So I'm the current mental health first aid instructor for the Perth Mint. But as we continue to grow, we definitely need to look at expanding our instructor network. Because I can't keep up with the pace of the training on my own. And it's also nice to have some diversity in our trainers who bring different perspectives and life experience as well. But another thing that we're working on is as we develop more in this space, we're finding more and more of our employees are feeling comfortable to disclose that they're experiencing mental health problems. So as a business, we're working to develop individual wellbeing plans with each of these people as they come forward to disclose. And it's really about working with them in a partnership about what can we do to support you and make this a more inclusive and welcoming workplace. And some of those adjustments are really simple things, it could be around working hours, it could be around making small changes to the work environment, or looking at different alternative duties and those sorts of things. But that partnership approach is definitely a big focus of us moving forward, so that the individual is a key part of their support plan.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kristen. Meg, from your perspective, I'd love to hear, what are your top 3 tips for organisations who are, perhaps they're at various different points in their journeys, but do you have, a couple of key things that you think would be really, really helpful for those sort of attending and listening today?
That's a big question to kind of only narrow it down to 3, but I think getting the foundation right is really important, and how you engage your workforce. So it's really understanding your business and your people, fundamentally your people, because that's going to be how you communicate with them, how you build your program around them, and kind of attach the heart and mind approach, and really drive the importance of why they do it, and how they can utilize it, not just at crisis, but how we treat people at home and at work. So that's probably the biggest one, is to really listen to your people and understand how your business works. I'm probably not going to do 3 because I'll try to squeeze as much as possible. But I think, partnering with the right business, if you don't have your own internal structure, is also important, because there's a lot of them out there as well that can kind of make those programs bespoke to how, what's going to resonate for you, and even how it's articulated with the right facilitator. Some are very verbose, and those can be great for very corporate offices, but if we're dealing with tradies, if we're dealing with blue collar, we need the right person to connect with them as well. And the other thing is, the system around how you make this sustainable and weave it into the fabric of your business is really important, so it doesn't sit as a standalone program, and how you continue to build confidence, so that your mental health first aiders can quickly and confidently support people, and they know what's currently out there, so that each person that they're working with they can kind of flex to supporting those people as best they can as well.
Thanks, Meg. And I'm sure there's many, many other things that you could share. Kerry, what I would love, you've touched earlier on, the transition from being, purely face-to-face sort of business, then being purely offline, and now living in this sort of blended mode. Any key things that you've found really beneficial to support people, whether it is online or face-to-face, thinking I guess both about supporting staff but also supporting your mental health first aiders and that cohort?
Yeah, and I think I can't remember who one of the other panelists touched on it earlier, but really supporting that network as a network of mental health first aiders. So similarly, we have quarterly catch-ups to share stories, lean on each other for support, although that does happen more often than quarterly, and have particular discussion topics or bring in other people to do training. So I think as these things happen, the pandemic we could not really proactively plan for, so there are elements of being reactive and learning as we go. I think this new hybrid way of working is new. We haven't done it before, so really that sharing of experiences, what's working for one person and one team and the team they support versus another, to try to get toward a level of best practice. But I think again, someone else mentioned it, mental health is so specific to a human and we're all different, so there's not going to be one size fits all. And yeah, I just think sharing as many stories and experience as possible is the best way we can do that.
Meg?
I just also wanted to add to that sentiment that it's also really important to support your network. Like for me, I use it frequently, and so I know what my boundaries are and what my triggers are. But for some of our other mental health first aiders, because we are so different, we might be placed in a position that we didn't expectedly feel a certain way or react a certain way. And it's really important that we help everybody debrief after we give mental health first aid as well. We're going to care for the carer as well, sort of thing. So it's important to build that within our system of support.
Definitely. Thanks, Meg. I think we've got time for one final question. So Liz, I might throw to you. What do you wish someone had told you when you started this journey? What's the one piece of advice you wish someone had given you as you embark on, this mental health first aid and first aiders journey?
I think probably not trying to do too much too quickly. And a lot has been mentioned about it being a journey. I'm quite a action-based person. So I sort of went in with multiple things that we were trying to do simultaneously to roll out both the mental health first aid, but also, as we mentioned, sort of policies and that sort of thing, just to try and have as big an impact within our workplace as possible. But as many of us has probably experienced, trying to take on too much just doesn't always work as well. So I think really, if someone had said, just focus on the one thing, like start that, be comfortable with that, and then sort of move forward. Don't feel that you need to tackle multiple things in different areas all at once. And also just being open to sort of pivoting and changing things as well. So just because you start on sort of one path with your mental health within your workplace doesn't mean you need to stay on that track. Looking at and probably being prepared for how to pivot. That's not something I really thought of when we were starting this within our organisation, sort of having plans A, B, C, D for when things come up and things change. As many of us have experienced going through the pandemic and that sort of thing, we can see how well we can pivot as individuals and within organisations, and being open to that, and also open to the growth in this area as well. We've seen so much growth within mental health, and I think there's going to be a lot more to come as well.
Absolutely brilliant. That is a wonderful place, I think, to close off this conversation. There's so many different threads that we've touched on, and I know I could continue this conversation for hours and hours, but in the interest of time, I guess some of my key takeaways from this session has been, the importance of executive leadership support and endorsement through this process really does start from the top, but needs to go right across the organisation. Also, the hearts and mind approach, building the culture so people want to take part in it and making it just part of the way that we do things around here, and really encouraging that. I think we've also touched on, every organisation is different, and the way that you might engage and approach in this is going to look different in different contexts. So it's okay to be bespoke and to take things, as Liz noted, one step at a time. Also, it's a whole of organisational approach. You can't just lock it away in a smaller team, but it does need to be around filtering around that whole organisation, whether you're 5 people or 500 people. I think another thing that I heard really strongly come out was around, asking people what they want and they need. Don't force it upon them, but building it to understand, where are your teams at? What are the different challenges they're facing, and how would they like to be supported, to make sure, it really is aligned to their needs. And of course, ensuring representation across different levels of leadership and seniority across different teams and contexts, so that everybody has multiple touch points that they're familiar with and who understand their unique context. And last but not least, support the ones who are doing the support. So making sure there's really good support for your mental health first aiders as well. And there were many other things. I've got 6 pages of notes. So hopefully you all found that really helpful. We do have one quick little video that we'll show before we wrap up. So we'll just bring that up on screen now.
Life can be full of ups and downs. For some, when they are down, they may be unsure of who to talk to and where to get help. That may be the case for someone you know. In those moments, having the skills and confidence to listen, connect, and offer support can make all the difference. Now imagine if we all had those skills. Having a conversation may save a life. Anyone can, and everyone should know how. Mental health first aid. For anyone, for everyone.
All right, that brings us to a close for today. Just a couple of quick reminders. Now, this session was recorded. You will all get an email link with that recording. So feel free to take a look at that if there were some key things that you wanted to go back over. There'll also be a survey link coming out to get your feedback. So really encourage you to fill that out. We'd love to understand, what have you liked and what do you want more of? And also just a quick reminder there around some of those key supports. So Lifeline Australia, Beyond Blue, and the Suicide Callback Service. That's all from us today. A big thank you to all of our panelists. You've been fantastic, and I know that there's been so much that we've all learnt today. And thank you all for attending. We hope you have a lovely rest of the day, whatever that brings for you, and best of luck on your journey around mental health first aid. Thanks, everyone.